David Stewart here. Thought I'd make a video that instead of being an instructional video would talk about something that I was talking to a friend about today, and a lot of people who are not deep into music don't quite understand. And that's the idea of why a lot of musicians seem to use drugs, why drug use seems really prevalent among musicians. If you're cued into the media, you're watching the news, and you may hear about a lot of artists that they do drugs or they do a lot of alcohol. And I can tell you from experience that that doesn't just happen at the highest levels. It doesn't just happen with the rich, sort of famous musicians, but it happens all the way down to the lowest tier, the guys who are making $50 a night. There's a lot of drug use in music. And the reason for that is usually different than what people think. They think of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of thing, that when you're performing music, there's this culture of excess, that you're suddenly have all this money and you're able to spend it on drugs or whatever you want. And there might be some truth to that to people who really make a lot of money playing music, but for people who are playing the bars, they don't really have the kind of money to go out and just blow it all on cocaine or something like that. Yet there's still a lot of drug use. And the reason there's a lot of drug use really has to do with what we ask of artists, what we ask of musicians. We ask musicians, like most artists, to be totally introverted. We ask them to have the capacity to go into a small room by themselves and practice and perfect their art and spend a lot of time alone in order to create the music that we want to hear, in order to write it, to practice it, to perfect it. Then we ask them to step on stage and to drop that introversion and become totally extroverted with the people in the audience, to engage them, to be able to look them in the eye, to create something entertaining for them, to move around and to do all these sorts of things that are really don't have much of anything to do with being an artist. They have to do with being an entertainer. So a lot of famous artists tend to be introverts, and a lot of my favorite artists tend to be introverts, and most of the people I've known over the years who are musicians also tend to be introverts, and it's how they deal with the challenge of being an extrovert on stage that matters. Drug use ends up being a very, very easy coping mechanism, and one that's pretty effective. When you are high, when you're stoned, when you're drunk, the emotional anxiety that comes along with performance, the stress and the drained feeling that you get from having to go out and connect with people in a room, that tends to be lessened a lot. So it becomes a sort of habitual thing. For people who are totally extroverted, they see an artist and they think they connect with them on that extroversion level. They think, well, it'd be great to go out and perform and be a rock star. But there's so few extroverts who actually become successful in music, because in order to get to the level where you can perform well, you have to be introverted enough to be able to go in and be disciplined and practice and perfect your art. At least for most things. I'm not talking about like manufactured pop stars or that sort of stuff. If you want to hear manufactured pop stars who don't care about how they sound, you can go look up the last Miley Cyrus, Bukkake, or whatever you want. It sounds terrible, and that's not my idea of necessarily a great artist. Even someone like Michael Jackson, who tends to be thought of as a great performer, is actually well known as being a fairly introverted person. So it's no wonder that he had the problems that he had, since he had a very big difficulty coping with fame and with dealing with lots of people. So I thought I'd talk about that. If you're aspiring to be an artist, if you're aspiring to be a musician, what you have to be able to do is to have the discipline to practice, to be that introvert, and then also be able to challenge yourself to go out and perform. And the more you perform, the more it's gonna be easy. The more you prepare, the more that performance is going to feel easy. And the more disciplined you're able to be in practice and the more experience you're going to get performing, the less you're going to feel like you need any kind of help from drugs or alcohol to make that happen. And I speak from personal experience. I've known a lot of people who used over the years, and I've been doing this for a long time. Even classical musicians are not immune. I knew opera singers that had to go smoke pot before they even walked on stage, or they would be too nerve-ridden to be able to do anything. So anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions about anything, you can ask them in comments on the channel comments, or you can hit up my Facebook. Have a nice day.